And now, kind of an exciting topic, hydrogen and fuel cells, which many people think might have a big future, and other people don't. So first, a subtle point. Hydrogen is not a fuel, technically speaking. So it's not like biomass or geothermal energy or other sources of energy. It is not a source of energy. Hydrogen is a way to store and transport energy, and that energy is then used in what's called a fuel cell. Currently, for producing hydrogen, the most common source is natural gas, because natural gas is mostly methane, and its chemical composition is 1 atom of carbon and 4 atoms of hydrogen, so CH4. Water would be better, but currently the most economical method uses methane. The challenge, and remember we keep saying there are always trade-offs. The trade-off with hydrogen is it's a gas, and so it takes a lot of hydrogen molecules to run the fuel cells in something like a car. That means that hydrogen gas has to be compressed down a lot. It has to be compressed so much that the pressure in a storage tank is 10,000 pounds per square inch, 10,000 psi. And just by the way, for comparison, think about the pressure in a bicycle tire or a car tire, where the pressure might be 30 or 40 psi. We're talking about 10,000 psi. So that means that you have to have storage tanks with really thick, heavy walls. And that means it's heavy and it takes up a lot of space. Another issue that we must consider is that hydrogen is very flammable. You might have read about the Hindenburg, a dirigible, a blimp, that ran on hydrogen and exploded horribly into flames some decades ago. So that's what hydrogen can do. So we have to be darn sure that our heavy, thick-walled tanks will not rupture or leak. Then we need some way of producing hydrogen from water or from methane. So if we just have one central production plant, then we have to have all these heavy, heavy trucks and tankers hauling little bits of hydrogen all over the place. That is not workable. What we need is localized places that produce hydrogen. And here from the Department of Energy is an example of a hydrogen I was going to say fueling station. It's not fuel, hydrogen filling station. So we're going to need local plants all over the country. There are experimental plants being developed now, and you may have read about some of them. For example, I think there's a site in the port of Long Beach down in California that is developing hydrogen production, and they're intending to run hydrogen fuel cell powered trucks, heavy trucks. That's still being developed. Stay tuned to see how that goes. Well, hydrogen and fuel cells are super clean. They don't reduce they don't emit greenhouse gases much, except, a little bit in the process, but very, very little. They cost less than gasoline. They're less toxic than gasoline. They use only non-toxic stuff like water. So they're a great thing. What do we do with hydrogen? We put it in this thing called a fuel cell, and it's the fuel cell that produces the energy. this is where we get our electricity to power our car or whatever it is we're running. And the chemicals in that fuel cell are hydrogen and oxygen. In a battery, not a fuel cell, but a battery, we have chemicals. There are various kinds of acids and lead plates and so forth, and those chemicals are permanently stored in the cells of the battery. Unlike batteries, in a fuel cell, the chemicals just flow through. So you've got water, or maybe you've got methane. It flows through. Oxygen is removed, other stuff comes out the other side, so it's a continuous supply. Some firms have been investigating the potential for large stationary fuel cells that can be used as power sources for buildings, and they function essentially like giant batteries, and they are considered such a workable idea that you'll notice that a lot of big companies that use large server farms are investing in fuel cells. Google data centers, eBay, I think Apple is doing some, Adobe is doing some. So there seems to be potential there. And you don't have to drive around with these big old heavy-walled tanks in your car. So maybe buildings is a good place to start.